Hey guys, today we're bringing you a little work that's a bit more special than the others, and well, as you can see below, the video ended up being a bit short. But apart from the short video, you will be quite surprised by this protagonist. He's just a guy who manages to break the cliché, so to find out how he did it, you'll have to watch because our boy is going to crush it, dude. We're going to have some good fights too. For a few minutes, he became almost a Sigma, so let's focus on the video. The monsters suddenly decided to appear in the world of our hero, so after the monsters appeared, destruction quickly followed. But heroes emerged. The heroes fought against the beasts, winning at high speed. But even winning, the greatest power in the world ended up falling, was killed, defeated, not having such a happy and not so sad ending. He ended up being kind of mourned by some people, but that was still not the end because he still did not give up. He gets a second chance. This was the chance where he will be returning to control the dead. But today we're here to follow the story where our protagonist has those powers similar to, I don't know, a character that commands an army and more. So, without further ado, let's focus on our story, which will then begin with an extremely giant portal appearing in the center of a city. From that city, numerous monsters entered the real world, coming from another world. And at that moment, humanity began to face numerous monsters and disasters that suddenly started to appear in the world. It invaded them, people, of course, did everything to survive these monsters. But well, due to this, the gods of our hero's world did not leave them in the dust. Marks appeared in the hands of the humans who lived in their normal world, which awakened a type of aura that gave them some pretty powerful abilities that would allow them to kill the monsters quickly. And so, the humans who had power fought against the monsters. Thus, a new era emerged, the era of the hunters. But that was in the past because then 3 types of classes also started to appear. Quite mythical classes. These were the king of the pharaoh, and also there was the king of the ephemeral, who was the most powerful dragon. However, there was still one last one, which was the ice one. The ice one wasn't that much. But because these mythical classes were so strong, the realms of the pharaoh, the realm of the ephemeral, and the ice had a lot of luck and power to conquer the world. But however, 100 years ago, a new talent appeared in the realm of the dragon. However, he was basically the strongest realm, the realm of the dragon. Shad, to demonstrate the power he had in hand, ended up entering a battlefield with several monsters, and he managed to take only 10 years to redefine the highest record in China, also becoming the first adept of his world there. He managed to reach level 70. So, he continued to fight against the monsters. He never had difficulty killing the strongest monsters that appeared. Each one of these monstrous beings ends up being defeated by Shad, but tired of sending weak monsters from load, then goes to a new level. However, after the appearances of much stronger level monsters that also suddenly decided to invade our hero's world, which had a level 9 classification, they invaded the world. Shad alone ended up kind of managing to defend the rift alone. He ended up saving the Dragon Kingdom just by himself, with his pure hand and his fish. They also try to kill the rest of the monsters. But having to fight this level 9 classification monster from the world, he ended up sacrificing himself, having in the end a not-so-dignified or perhaps more than dignified death. He ended up being mourned by his heroes and his companions. In the end, he died there. But then 100 years passed after the death of our heroic one who destroyed the strongest monsters in the world. But on a dark night, we observe a city where a person is walking in the darkness. We observe that a TV was commenting that the best service of the happening, a type of event where novices could be awakening their powers. At the same time, the second stage had a total of only 12 million people trying to awaken their small powers. However, from last year to this next year, there was an increase of 11% compared to the previous year, which was basically a record. That was only 100 years ago, but among these people who change class, which is responsible for 10%, is a record in the year Sean was born. Perhaps this year anticipates the birth of the next Shallow. But at that moment, a lightning bolt crosses the city, cutting to another place. In a totally dark room, we observe a person sleeping. But before our big boy here can fall asleep, the system's voice appears. commenting that a power between worlds was connected to our PR, and if awakening was about to open, and the doors of the alternative world are about to open to obtain that power. He then wakes up, widening his eyes. He begins to hear the class change and quickly gets up, surprised by this. He gets up and tries to understand where he was. He died, but where was he? At that moment, he felt a huge pain in his head, putting his hand on his head to alleviate the pain a little. He ends up having some memories. These memories came strong. One of them came stronger, where he ended up awakening his class. But he awakened as the most useless class in the world. The people he loved the most ended up betraying him, leaving him aside. They never even wanted to give Zero a chance to be recognized. But at that moment, thinking about what he would do for being seen as just a failed brother, MC ends up kind of waking up and wondering why these memories were coming into his head. So he stops to think. Stopping and thinking, he ends up understanding that our hero ended up transmigrating to a body that had a name similar to his from his past life, but he was surprised that now he had a new ability. This new ability was the Beast Tamer. To him, it was not such a useless class. Of Beast Tamer is trust of his animal, since you mainly will need that your animal be strong and at the same time fight against strong monsters, because you will not have the chance to fight, because the goal of the Beast Tamer is to make that your monster fights for you yourself. But however, someone calculated this to cultivate a powerful Beast Tamer. It was necessary to have wealth enough to tame an entire kingdom. A poor boy like him, there would not manage to do this. Not besides. He was just a person like Zhang. This was the name of the original owner of this body who, for having awakened this class, ended up taking some medicines that, ended up making himself desist. Thus, then standing in front of a mirror, he still can observe a little boy trembling with fear deep down. But then now comes the main point. Right? He was not that guy there. That failure. He was Lioso, the strongest guy of the Dragon Kingdom, and since he ended up assuming this body, he will be able to awaken again a good class and a better one than this. So then he will be assuming control of this body from now on, where there, he will be assuming the responsibility of the failure, where there he will be conquering things that the same there would never dream of conquering. So he thinks this as a form of gratitude for having managed to reincarnate in the body of a fail. So in this moment, here, he asks for the system to appear. It appears the doors to the alternative world are about to open for class change. He then asks for that to open right away. After asking this in front of him, appears a kind of black hole, but that there. Our hero uses as a portal to teleport to another place in this moment. Then he sticks his hand in that portal. After that, he takes a step forward, and in this moment, Chal LOL ends up entering his dimension. The system comments that Chow was offline for only 36.55 days. So in this moment, the system gives some points that our protagonist had like some numbers quite big, and also it gives some congratulations to our protagonist for having killed a beast of level E, and there it was, a mythical class, giving our protagonist a new class. This was the super class, so our protagonist asks for that thing to be activated in him. Then the effect is activated in our MC in his direction. A giant energy enters him. So he ended up obtaining 999 points at once added, and this gives some millions or billions of alternative energy that he could be using for himself. And in this moment, then the system there asks, then for our protagonist to choose a class. Since now he has the option to choose a new class. He had the choice to choose a class of wizard, necromancer, or warrior, or knights, and among those other classic classes. So looking at the classes that he there had, he comments that 100 years ago he ended up awakening as a superior warrior, but the class and the cores were stronger in this alternative world. But to tell the real truth, Zero in his past life he reincarnated as a monster tamer. But now he no longer wants to be a monster tamer. The reason was simple for you to get this class. You need many negative points for your animals could be absorbing that for themselves to be the strongest, have a much better development. But however, he ended up kind of reincarnating, and he also managed to gain quite a lot of points, so our Meenal from Adin goes to that basic and classic class. Wow, He's going to send an air gas because now he chose the Necromancer class. And then at this moment, our protagonist, after choosing that, ended up gaining without stars a kind of bonus, and then he ends up realizing that this then was the meaning of being able to choose a mythical class. The system gives those basic congratulations to our MC for now having a Necromancer class, and then it shows a system screen showing the positive and negative points of this Necromancer class, but the intelligence of common beast tamer pets is obtained there through quest rewards, and the quality cannot even be improved over time. But a necromancer has the opposite of a monster tamer. He can summon a creature as well as make his little creature evolve and get stronger. However, last time our hero managed to clear 70 worlds, which made him the strongest in this world by being able to cause quite a havoc. But at the moment, he ends up realizing that it took him 10 years to achieve this feat. But now with this new power, he will be able to cross many, many more universes where he will be able to defeat more and more, die. And this thing now will allow our protagonist not to be the strongest in the Dragon Kingdom, but also he will be the strongest in the whole world. So at this moment, our hero kind of ends up leaving that dimension. He goes to another dimension in this other dimension. The system comments with him so that he couldn't fall in the hand against anyone, because this area here was forbidden. But at the moment you have a question if he wanted to continue with the name of that famous hero of the past, but he said no, he wants to change the name. He just wants to change the name to Zero, since his goal is to surpass that other hero, his hero in the past. So then after choosing his name, he approaches more in this gigantic city, where there we observe people saying that this city was very beautiful. Moreover, he wonders where the monsters were here. Was a place even that safe? Another said it was just a safe area. Monsters there were more. But for that background there where he could be evolving. More while they discussed this, the system appears to everyone saying that the first mission has started soon. Then one shouts to gather everyone here in one place, just to join a team there. But here it shows us his mission source of the nightmare. What it meant was that the monsters there at night will become much more powerful. And they should be careful because where he steps, there was maybe an extremely broken monster that was there hidden just waiting for the right moment to attack. So to begin, the system asks the players to kill 100,000 monsters in the battle area, but our MC, after observing the layout of this thing, realizes that even after 100 years nothing has changed, so he basically needed to find equipment to already start his monster hunts. So he is teleported to a village where our hero goes to a blacksmith. The blacksmith ends up asking what they wanted Charles. This was the blacksmith of this city, but soon then he approaches the blacksmith. He notices that the blacksmith was selling good equipment, but for him now it wasn't worth it. The equipment was for beginners, and that the blacksmith hears all this coming from our MC. He finds it uncomfortable, but still asks our boy not to worry because he has very good equipment. But on the contrary, to have those things in hand, it was necessary to shell out a lot of money right there to get that good equipment. However, so Zero is listening to this. He puts on the table there a small bag full of coins. There were 100 coins because he could be with cloth, so he asks for 1-star equipment. Then at the moment, then he ends up getting a 1-star staff. He asks to go back there. So right after buying that, we observe the figures, right? Who comment that the 1-star equipment wasn't that good. It couldn't be increasing his attack power, so it was more economical to buy a 1-star weapon, which was weaker with curiosity in hand. Others appear commenting that even if he has a 1-star equipment there, that is even weak for him. Maybe not, but saying that he already tries to refute, because refining equipment requires a lot of alternative energy, which can only be obtained in small quantities by killing some monsters and missions. So it was impossible to have a very powerful 1-star equipment, and it is also true there, commenting that it is not worth having, that unless you are a friend of the ADM, because there you have, that was impossible, and even more putting everything in a 1-star equipment leaking there. Others in the background start discussing already our Zero, thinking it's a very B animal for seeing that he there is spending all his gold there on useless things, but totally ignoring the vision of these background characters, and which we cut to him. Then Zero here says a few things that he chose a specific reason for having this very powerful staff, And it's also not worth buying a 1-star equipment there if it wasn't for the class he has. Because besides that, it was impossible to get so much negative energy, and besides that, the high-ranking people here would be leveling up there. And furthermore, people would not be easily getting these alternative energies. Not for them, but for our hero here. It was easy. He has a lot of it. So he then ends up getting his staff putting a lot of powerful energy there. He ends up sending that energy. The system appears commenting there to use this thing. He ends up consuming an alternative energy point, and the item has a 10% chance of being upgraded to a green attribute, which the higher the attribute, the higher there will be the refining rate. And the rate of being able to increase this could be decreasing, increasing, having perhaps one success after another, soon, then a refining point ends up succeeding. There then 0. Then 0 to get a more broken staff. He starts spending his negative points there to be refining his staff. The system appears all the time, commenting that it is not worth upgrading the staff all the time, but our 0 doesn't care. 0 wants to get a much more powerful staff. Then their successes come after success, because he has a lot of negative energy. He easily manages to make some refinements there in his staff. Stopping our MC ends up realizing that the staff ends up getting to achieve the maximum refinement level. He then becomes happy about it. In front of him, several hackers appeared. Now he realizes that the staff became stronger. Soon, because he refined the staff 132 times, he ends up reaching its maximum potential by using hundreds of billions of alternative energy in the staff, and this then gives our protagonist some magical attack powers, because each attack that the enemy receives from this staff will be in a burning state that will last only 3 seconds, losing 20 health points every second. A personal note in the flames is basically the meaning that everyone will be burned to ashes. Soon then, if his preparation is complete, he is now ready for the battle. And now 0 will chase monsters that didn't even exist in the world, but he will try to catch the little critters. After using a few billion alternative points, there were still 2 billion or quadrillion left for him to use on other equipment to make it as overpowered as the one he has in hand. Then in a slightly darker forest, we observe some explosions happening in the background, and then the system comments that the nightmares of N started. Monsters then appeared. A monster with rabbit teeth attacked some hunters, but the hunters simultaneously attacked it, dealing 2 damage, but this was not enough to kill the wolf with rabbit teeth. The little wolf was very powerful. Its opponent below did not doubt its strength. The damage of that was very strong, and every moment he tried to dodge any attack that the wolf with rabbit teeth tried to attack him with. If a single attack hit him, he might be easily killed with 1 blow. Thinking about what he would do to win against the little wolves, we observe a light in the background. But that light goes at high speed towards the wolf with rabbit teeth, dealing 55 damage to the wolf. The hunters were pale to see such power, and they looked in the direction from where the hunter who activated that ability came. With his mouth open, he received some points for killing some wolves. Our MC walked towards the wolf that was lying on the ground. Walking, the system gave our protagonist some points, some experience points for killing some wolves. But at this moment, the hunters below realized that he was a legendary hunter with all attributes in full points. Besides that, he had complete level sets, which was impossible. Common professionals also need equipment to defeat these wolves, which were very weak. But for him, with just 1 shot, he easily finished off the wolves. Observing a little closer, our hero realized that he was very strong. But now, seeing up close, his damage was excellent. The other realizes that all his sets are of gold level, and she thinks he could be a veteran in this game. But this was impossible here. They were in the beginner stage. There is no reason to have veterans here either. Of course, a lot of resources are needed to refine a single thing, and he didn't have that. It was impossible. But the moment he talks about it, they end up believing it because, without a doubt, he was a specialist who already knew the whole area. Stopping behind, they then starts to observe the 0 is thinking this place where he was, the territory of the monsters was level 1. He needed to find some monsters that had a much higher level. What makes our hero here couldn't stop very fast. The monsters were very weak. So for that, he ends up thinking he is going to a certain garage inside the garage. There, you will be able maybe find some nightmare-level monsters quite strong, like Giant Trail, or mutated with a much higher level than him, from level 3 to 4, which would be the poisonous spiders, but from 5 to 7, there were the armored scorpions, but also had one from 8 to 9 that had the wild boars encouraged, but also to be able to level up much faster. There was another creature. This was the boss, the level 10. Boss that they're you managing to kill that will get XP and maybe some very good items. And so now, for Zero, the best choice he could be making was to follow the higher level monsters, to be able to be leveling up, and need to be managing to kill level 3 monsters upwards, which there only finds in the factory there in front, abandoned at this moment. Then he goes in another direction. But when trying to follow the path of the abandoned factory, we observe a ray of smoke appearing in front of him. These were those extras. Then one of the extras after appears, and already appears. They're asking our protagonist if he could already be joining his team. If he wants to accept, he will be calling our protagonist. Also, some cousins come. If he accepts, you already know what happens from there on. Because yes, it's nothing. Because our dear Zero suddenly becomes a Sigma that here ends up refusing their proposal. They didn't want to know about these extras. Our boy just asks them to leave. They then, understanding that it was not worth it, apologize, staying behind. We observe our Zero getting closer and closer to the factory. But as he approached the factory, we observe that extra there, that here. He now comments on a new little thing. The new little thing was about the power of our protagonist. The hour that our there ended up slashing up on them had basically overcome a monster, an aura of monster, which meant he had hidden power within him. Background agrees only with our Zero, but they ask to wait, because there they see that our protagonist was heading in a certain direction, but this direction that he was heading, guess, was of the abandoned factory. They basically wanted to understand why he wanted to be entering there inside, since upon entering there, he will be able to find monsters of a much higher level than them, and quite dangerous monsters. And now he wonders if he will be able to deal with those monsters there alone. And already then, right while they were wondering about this, about our boy, not from another place, being cut. Right here, we observe again a rat with rabbit teeth that here opens its mouth to try to catch a certain someone. But what they received the most were the damages. These were the monsters that end up kind of being defeated by our hero. Some spiders, some mutant creatures, there end up receiving a damage from our protagonist. Zero passes by them and easily defeats one of them. Defeating them, our MC ends up being able to reach some new levels. The system congratulates again you, our Zero, and for having reached these new levels, our protagonist managed to achieve another 30 mana and 12 skill points there, and another 6 points he could distribute in whatever he wanted there. So he also ended up gaining some points, but unfortunately the points he just gained were not enough to reach the next class, only that there he is disappointed about it. Only that at this moment, a spider appears, but our protagonist puts his staff in front of the front. Was there, the spider gave at this moment only active skill, making a small explosion up there on this spider that just appeared for our Zero. Again, the system congratulates our MC for having achieved more than 30 points there, and other things too. Only that he also managed to reach level 3, advancing then in another direction. Advancing, we see from behind the monsters that our protagonist just crushed in the pure magi there, but for having managed to kill a lot of monsters, he ended up unlocking a new type of skill. This skill is the fireball, and he did not expect that legendary class user would have like these legendary bonuses here. So having a legendary class, you will have 6 times more chances of getting better things than a weak class. And after leveling up 3, the attributes were finally freely distributed in his status, there reaching 18 points. There these points he ended up in the end putting everything in just defenses owets, and I'm basically have the best paths to be having a quite high growth here soon at the beginning. So it was crucial to ensure that the fundamentals of these skills there be fundamental to evolve, and he needed to evolve without the fastest possible. So then he distributed 5 points to each thing there in systems, and already as initial skills with supernatural skills are basically limited to common professionals. But generally for him, he would not waste them here. At this moment looking at these skills, he ends up cracking a smile, because unfortunately in this life, what he has least is energy. So he goes with his finger in that energy location. He DA level up in that. So what he but trying to do at the moment was to distribute the points in the best skills he distributed there for a long time. He dissed Ibia, only that there he ended up reaching the maximum level. By having reached the maximum level, the initial levels of the abilities could be achieving 140% of damage there when fired towards the enemy. So now the system congratulates Zero, again for having achieved a new thing. His skills reached a level much more than superior. He in front of his system realizes that at this rate, after completing the first 2 world tasks, it would be easy to be able to reach level 8 in front of him. He observes the main missions that appeared there. So to get to the other world, it was necessary to defeat the boss. He then turns in the other direction. Turning, he is already surprised with something in front of him. He ends up meeting with a gate, nothing giant in front of this gate. Our Zero ends up putting his hand on, that he then opens that door opening. He ends up finding himself in a totally different place. But looking at one side, he ends up managing to find an NPC that is looking at him. Finished without a coconut on his leg, he stayed there looking at our Zero. And he also received the mission to kind of be helping that NPC in front of him. But here, besides dying in the game, you also die in real life if you die in the game. That was his main reason to take a bit more care, but soon after realizing that his mission was to help the NPC, we see him opening his mouth. He asks our hero to take care of 2 monsters inside that dungeon because they killed his wife and children, and he asks him to kill these special scorpions as soon as he talks about it. The system appears asking our hero there to accept the mission to eliminate some scorpions. But then at this moment, he realizes that the equipment obtained in this NPC mission is 10 times better than what he currently has in hand. As he now only has 1 equipment in hand, he needs to be chasing after this mission for it to be more than worth it. The system even gives some special details of this mission, but he doesn't care about these special points that the system mentions because at this moment, he ends up discovering that there were some activities of some people in this city here. So it meant there were living people around here. And then, in front of our hero, we see a gigantic city completely abandoned. But it seems that here, there are not only monsters. However, he needs to buy the missions. This was already his priority for now. However, eyes appeared there in the cracks of the abandoned houses. Monsters end up appearing in the darkness. But there this monster was an iron-class scorpion that just appeared. He who hadn't seen this little bug for a long time was surprised by its visit here. He missed the little bugs. And then in front of our hero appear some FFO scorpions there that are level 5. These are mutated scorpions that, due to environmental pollution, developed a very resistant iron shell that allows them to withstand a large amount of power attacking them. So they would give trouble to our Zero thinking about it. So the iron scorpion ends up jumping towards a certain person. This was the Zero N, with his mouth open trying his luck, but our protagonist behind there ends up already drawing his staff well. He roasts with his staff. Our little story already goes on after that. Scorpion appears. The beast then immediately attacks our hero, but he quickly pulls from his system that his spear, the scorpion then attacks. But at that moment, he uses his fire spear to manage to defend himself from that, its tail, throwing that tail of the scorpion back, allowing him there to have a little more advantage. But the scorpion's armor ended up being activated there. Then an explosion happens, The ground ends up kind of being cracked just by its quite powerful pressure, but at that moment he jumps over the scorpion. Now, he's seeing that the scorpion was hovering below him. Our hero grabs his spear and puts that down, and he activates a specific ability of his, which is that spear to strike someone, and Dan at that extra and greater will be given, so that then he kills the scorpion. He ends up gaining his reward, but by using the fireball, the power of the spear allows him to have an extremely high power of firepower. But unfortunately, that ability consumes a lot of mana from our hero. He discovers that he needed to find a faster way to end this fight, so he needed to find the leader. So for that, he will be trying to finish off the weaker ones first, so he fights for a little while against them. But at that moment there, he ends up finding the scorpion that caught his attention. At that moment, he prepares to attack it. Only there, when thinking of doing that, something starts to happen at that moment. An extremely powerful hour arises out of nowhere here. Our hero, after realizing that this H arose, he ends up discovering that it was the voice, the strongest scorpion, that ends up emerging from under the earth, rising there above the earth. We observe our little boy preparing himself. Then, since the big one has just appeared, he must kill this big one before his mana ends up running out completely. So for that, at that moment, he ended up putting the strongest mana at the tip of his spear. Thereafter, putting that, he simply points that in the direction of the scorpion. A fireball comes out of it and flies in the direction of the scorpion. That power was enough to end with, not to end with it, because the Supreme Scorpion ends up simply passing the tail there to the side, but incredibly by passing to the other side. And there we observe there the fireball. Our hero being easily evaporated, he does not understand how that was possible. But well, it was predicted that the scorpion's shell was quite powerful, that all he managed to do was just some scratches there on his tail. So knowing that he prepares because that tail is already flying in his face, he then crouches so that it could pass over him. That happens, he uses a firmness in his skin, so he jumps up again, up. He uses that as fireball. But here he asks himself if maybe this is his weak point. And again, he activates his super fireball ability that when active, we see an explosion happening. That thing ends up going through the Supreme Scorpion, making several cuts. Pieces of your body ends up being thrown a little back. An explosion happens, and our hero jumps to the side to not be caught by the entire attack now besides salve. There, he comments that he was very lucky because his immobility was much faster. Since there, he realized that if he hadn't moved, he would get hurt, since S-Man ended well. Now that he gave the last blow, he needed to finish already with this Scorpion King. So if he finished him, he would already win his reward for his mission. Well, here, everything was going totally right. Nothing wrong happened until a guy appeared from behind with a machete in hand to try to knock down our hero from above the Scorpion's hand. We observed there, believing that this really was the Scorpion King. It was really him. How did he really manage to defeat this thing? So if by chance we stop our hero, they possibly would be winning the mission in his place. So we watched that guy there who caught our boy by surprise. He passes the machete next to our hero. But instead of hitting him, he simply hit the air now, as he did not hit our protagonist. It was very easy because he took a step a little to the side, so after waiting a long time, he finally showed himself. Now he is surprised to see that our protagonist all this time already knew that he was trying to ambush our hero here. He stops and saw that he could no longer do anything but to find out this was easy. Because always in this world there are people who want to level up honestly. Or they can also level up by robbing other people, which is not such a difficult method. But you need to be strong and intelligent, only that now they weren't. But they were very lucky to find weak people. Only that now they had the luck for choosing him as their target, since the enemies he faced were a million times stronger than them. So with an extremely powerful aura, he ends up throwing that in the direction of the figures. The figures wonder how this was possible here at this moment. We just observe there that fire of our hero catching them. They end up being evaporated, while one of them was evaporated by that fireball. We observe him in the background seeing one of his companions stuck there, seeing one of his friends going to another universe. Congratulations to our boy for getting a pet. But his pet was not just any, since he was the Emperor Scorpion. He advanced towards the extra while advancing again. The system appears here. We show a little of his strategy. One of them ends up explaining that if by chance our hero died, there his pet kind of losing a loyalty point from 10 could drop to 0 if it dropped to 0. Very likely that his pet would revolt here now. While there our protagonist sees this, he thought there of the ways that people always don't want to be taking this class of necromancer or tamer, since tamers need to have a lot of negative points, and that was difficult to get. But for him, it wasn't so much. However, if you are a very experienced tamer and like to have more, I don't know, animals close to you, you can get more, will want more, few points. However, for our protagonist, this was already enough, but for common people, this is impossible. But our hero is not a common person, and at this moment then, he ends up using some of his points to level up his pet until he notices it. The creature ends up reaching a D rank class. It is a very powerful class. The guy ends up shouting, "What kind of monster was that? How could a guy tame a monster that acts as a boss?" Maybe he is a rich person, but it was not possible. Only that while he would find that out, our Zero interrupts him, asking that a while ago someone started spying on them, like some spies who are basically assassins, and he basically guesses who these people were, and also even guesses, right? The same guys who were spying on him for a long time ended up choosing the same mission that he chose. Maybe this was the main reason for seeking him here, only that it was their mistake, the guy cried, already knowing his end. He ends up thinking that it was his worst mistake to have chosen our boy as a target, there to be hunting the man, dragging him to take everything he had. So knowing that he will not be able to survive, he thinks if he should run, but it was no use. Our MC here ends up thinking faster. He then asks his pet to already take care of this opponent. So as soon as the request was made, our hero's monster ends up throwing the guess what towards our extra there. He did not even see the movement of that there. The tail of that scorpion ends up hitting right in his belly. He, who ended up being stunned, there on the ground, asks for forgiveness and asks our Zero not to kill him. But in this world, the strong always try to attack the weaker, and they also had the bad luck of choosing him as their target. Unfortunately, it is the law of the jungle. He will have to hunt the weaker ones. And then he sends off our extra, who did not last very long. After that, everything ended up going perfectly well. He went there to that guy who was just the stump there on the ground, told him that he killed the Scorpion King, everyone there, and avenged the scorpions that killed his family. Now then he ends up thanking his brother, and also ends up giving him some good rewards. And then that he completes the mission, he ends up earning some points, allowing him to level up. But he also ends up earning a magic necklace that gives some quite good advantages. He also ends up earning a pair of boots armor that also has a very high defense and a very good life that will give some extra attack protection there to our hero. So at this moment he is very happy because he is getting some type of equipment that ends up adding some extra mana upon killing, I don't know, some monster there. Also won some boots that will give extra protection to him, so he ends up asking the system to update that to the maximum level for having basically infinite hack. The system ends up giving ZPR grades that our protagonist desires with these two equipments here that he ended up winning by defeating the Scorpion Emperor. He ends up thinking that he could be leveling his power level with other people quickly. Then while he was wondering where he would be getting mana to get more power, we see next the system screen appearing, giving a new news, since there in a specific and secret area, a kind of secret boss will appear that if defeated, he will be gaining some rewards, but will have to kill this boss within an hour. If past this, loses the boy. The extras upon hearing this news already get very happy, and they will certainly capture this secret mission. But our protagonist realizes that this mission was much closer to him. He thinks he should be running to get the mission as soon as possible, since this mission caught the interest of our Zero, and that certainly will be only his and no one else's. Then, if the POA then ends up opening, people ask to gather there to join their team to enter there, since there, he heard that upon entering there, he will be gaining quite good rewards for beginner level. But some disagree. Since that was level 5, they are beginners entering. There was literally suicide, and would be dying easily to any creature. But since no one will want to be venturing inside that portal, our protagonist will have to be the first to enter that. He then enters. But at the point he is about to enter, a hand appears and interrupts, throws our zero to the side. Here we introduce this guy, who was a certain president, and upon appearing we observe that he was a little more than elegant. So our MC wonders, who is that there? Who is this crazy guy who just appeared? Then the other ends up kind of explaining that he was the guy called Linan, that he was one of the sons of the richest men of the Linan lineage, and currently the liquid fund of his family goes past the billions or reaches trillions. And that was true since he was the Luai, the high-profile guy there, who is there equipped in hand with one of the one-star equipment. So fighting against the monsters will basically be easy since he also has 1 million subordinates. But at this moment, the girl who was next to him ended up calling for Zangu and wonders what he was doing here. Then he ends up having a small memory. This was his ex-girlfriend, not his girlfriend, the ex-girlfriend of the owner of this body here, but her name was something similar to Lin or something like that. She who there heard our hero ends up kind of thinking that he should judge him by the cover. She then approaches and starts to judge him for being a beast tamer, a poor and weak guy who barely manages to pay the rent. So what will he be doing here? Since he will be heading to a secret rank 5 raid, only now our zero was different. He wonders what the problem was. She gets scared and wonders who he was, since before he would come begging her to give him another chance, but knowing that she almost got caught, she then approaches her new boyfriend and comments that strong men like, and one like this here, should be passing this test, and with all certainty, he will be able to get the greatest resources of this secret ride soon. Then he ends up understanding the malice, and then he ends up getting into her game. He then starts to hug her and starts to say some things about our protagonist. Our protagonist ends up asking to take this one right away and take her with him there into that portal since she was just a shoe used by him. If by chance he likes her, he can take, but as much as the secret kingdom is a more different thing, our protagonist will not be allowing there, that he could pass the secret test easily, but well, for having said that, she interrupts Zan, ended up saying something quite absurd and should be respecting the big brother. They're the most powerful guy, his arrogance was not as great, powerful as his, so she asks for that guy to end our hero. Well, they could be trying to do that, but if by chance they prioritize a good life, wasn't it better to take this chance? No, at this moment, she screams there for Brother Chow to end him. She knows his pantomime and also knows that he was weak and was just a piece of trash. But it was strange. The aura that our hero emanated there was different. Like if he tried to attack there, he most likely wouldn't have a chance. Even most likely he would be defeated. And for the first time, we see an arrogant extra, recognizing his fear that most likely he would not win him. So he ended up raising his hand, saying that maybe he would defeat our hero. Just maybe later, since now he was in a hurry to be entering the secret portal and maybe doesn't have much time to waste there with such a weak person. While the arrogant one entered the portal, he asks for the other weak ones there to enter the portal too, since they have a kind of resurrection amulet if they died. Most likely they will be returning to the initial base gaining there. Then the motivation of the extras, he, with the motivation Inde, ends up following the path along with that one who tried to end the reputation of our hero while they entered the portal from another place. We see a guy appearing asking him to give up. They were just some poor guys. And well, he was rich. Maybe he wouldn't win against them. But our zero ends up refuting, saying that if by chance he had that poor mentality, he wouldn't be able to maybe be the strongest person, despite the fact that Hang Hu, the original owner of this body, was quite poor. This had nothing to do with him. At this moment, he ends up following the path, but there we observe in the background others screaming that the owner of the business industry had a kind of resurrection scroll that could bring back to life this new bar friend of our protagonist, pretends that he will not see our hero here. Zhang follow the path of that portal there. Maybe he would die in this death image that they now will be entering with all certainty. The monsters in there will be a little much more than potent, but with the current strength he has, that was already more than enough to deal with the small mobs, and he is also not afraid of being defeated by the weaker monsters. There maybe by the final monster, since there he has the combination of his rank S Scorpion, unless his rank S Scorp suddenly starts to rebel, but that won't happen. He then turns towards the portal. After turning, He enters, but upon entering that portal, we can see that group of extras. The arrogant one ends up entering first, but that ex-girlfriend of our protagonist ends up calling basement. She saw the great exile of the strongest family in the world being intimidated in front of everyone, and not because he avenged the guy was dumb, but not enough to face him in a 1v1 there in front of everyone. The reputation of his family would certainly be going something down for East killing a beginner who just changed class there in the middle of nowhere. But also, she from there could relax, since he will make that beast tamer kneel to the ground near him. So then the arrogant one ends up following his path. But here, the scene is cut to a place where we can see a flame of fire and direction that ends up hitting the monsters, giving some damage. At that moment, he realizes that the pets basically need the same experience that our protagonist needs there to be pan of level or something like that. But fortunately, there he has a better thing, since the updates of Necromancer's animals only require a small part of the XP that our protagonist gains, which allows him to now kill small mobs of low classes. That's already enough for our protagonist to quickly level up his armored scorpion to the highest level. Then he ends up cleaning up the rest of the monsters that were left. While there, he finished off the weaker monsters from the background. We see there behind a rock the extras. The figures end up understanding that he wasn't just any poor person. Besides, he had a scorpion there that killed any monster in its path in one hit. Only then they end up realizing that they commented on something they shouldn't have done before, which was ridiculing our MC a little. But now that he's already finished off some monsters, he follows a path only that in front of him appear some girls that were interested in our protagonist. One of them even wanted to join our Zero's team. Another one, who was more daring, wanted to date him already. She wouldn't be cheating on our Zero, but he simply passes by them saying he wasn't into it. She is left speechless. After a long time, he ends up arriving there in the city of the secret mission, so he needed to be more careful now since the monsters were much stronger than before, so he should be updating the defense of his armored scorpion so that it would serve as a human shield for himself, so that he could be dealing some damage to his opponent. The ES peon inside him gets excited, already knowing that he will have a greater type of U8 in his defense soon. Then he ends up thinking that also using that equipment there, that people there that restores his mana quickly, he can be using his fireball capable of killing any monster quickly in one hit only. But there is a catch. You can use that pendant there in only 10 minutes, but 10 minutes for our hero was already more than enough. Soon, then he enters the portal. But inside the portal, we can observe a war happening there. People fought against monsters, but it was no use. The monsters here were very strong. Soon, then, their defenses were easily broken. That the ex-girlfriend of our Zero asks for them to be able to regroup again, because she needed to level up more. Because if they don't manage to do this, they will not be able to pass through this raid, then to recover all the power they need to use that resurrection stone to return to the lobby. But at this moment, our Zero ends up shouting that if there's anyone around here calling attention there soon, the arrogant then looks up and here realizes that it was him again, our hero. But now he asks our hero if he was afraid of dying, but also asks how he got here since he was on the 5th floor. But our Zero doesn't even respond, just simply laughs in his face, making the arrogant irritated. The arrogant ends up standing up and shouts there for this poor loser down there, to at least get some revenge on his arrogance. But at this moment, a group asks for him to be able to retreat, since the monsters here could be hearing them. But as they couldn't stay here anymore, they end up returning to the lobby. But the same arrogant asks for our Zero to die here. If he doesn't die here, he himself will be carrying, and doing it now that he left, he can finally be using his maximum power. But for that, he needed the Supreme Scorpion to appear again, because the ground here starts to crack. After a few minutes, a tail appears, and now he was here, the strongest monster. This was the armored blonde scorpion. Its level was level 7, and as expected, this was not a scorpion compared to the others, literally. This was on a much higher level than anyone he had ever seen in his life. Then, to end the play, he ends up also calling his boss his best little pet that he has here at the moment. He then obeys, so he ends up leaving his pastime there. The two start staring at each other, and damage there starts happening in the boss. It's here then, after a good time fighting, he discovers that not even his pet here that was the strongest could not be able to knock down a boss like this in one hit. It was as expected. A level 7 boss, but to end the play, he pulls his staff soon, then he launches several attacks in the boss's direction, causing 225 damage. But however, that was not enough. He ended up recovering, and quickly he prepares his tail to be attacking our hero, and then he would be caught in midair. But his scorpion appears that quickly ends up grabbing that tail now that it was grabbed, and nothing else would be hindering our protagonist. He can be attacking his last attack, the most powerful he has. So several fireballs appear in his hand that then ends up running quickly in the boss's direction, hitting the creature fully after several consecutive hits being hit fully in his face. We observe the damage that happened there. The animal was seriously injured, but even that was not enough to kill the thing. Then he jumps on top of the boss, then prepares again to attack our hero at this moment, that he was going to do that. He simply out of nowhere ends up stopping. He looks at our Zero, but it doesn't last long. He falls hard to the ground on top of the defeated boss. He ends up thinking that this here was too easy. Well, he needed something stronger, but the system congratulated our Zero here, and he then ends up earning some extra points. But at this moment, someone comments that someone already managed to pass the secret test. He then starts to wonder, who is this Zero? Well, this Zero there was stronger than everyone who was around here since the secret raid was level. See, our hero's ex-girlfriend ends up wondering if by chance they came back. So it means that Zero, our hero, managed to literally kill the strongest boss there just to start. The arrogant one then realizes that it was a mistake to mess with our protagonist. So even so, he tries to connect the things. He asks the ex-girlfriend of our Zero if something happened there, since after her ex-boyfriend, she goes inside. The announcement appeared that there he managed to kill the strongest boss that was there in front of him. She then said that it was impossible. He had a pet mode, and type tamer in this world was a failure, so it was also impossible since the monster there was of level 7 grade. Then, understanding the truth, he ends up thinking that maybe there was a person involved in the middle to fight against the secret boss. But then, knowing that this Zero was strong, he ends up thinking of hiring Zero for his team. So he shouts for everyone to find Zero and make Zero join his team. Dispensing as he saw that now received the new order from his master, we cut the scene here to another corner. In another corner, we observe that the drop rates of the Lords of Monsters are indeed higher than those of the common ones, as most always drop copper coins, projects, and equipment. But the most important thing is this scroll. This was the secret scroll. Its quality was the black iron level. I would also use this. It consumes 1,000 alternate energy points to upgrade to another level. But after you open this scroll, you will be receiving a significantly large amount of silver coins. But it was a question as simple as Zero. He wondered if he could upgrade this thing to bronze level with just 1,000 alternate points. Understanding that possibly he ends up upgrading to bronze, but Zero needed to level up more for the next level. So it was done, spending 2,000 alternate points, and in front of him appears that scroll, which was a very low level. But there was basically never a secret scroll of king level in the first world like this. However, if you go to the market, it would probably cost hundreds or thousands of dollars. So this, like class change, would undoubtedly be a very good thing for him since he could sell it for a huge amount of money. So he could sell this thing and earn a fortune that could already retire and never work in the dungeon again. But this was not for him. His goal here now was to pass through these alternate worlds easily. So Zero uses that secret scroll. After using it, he ends up receiving a mission in front of him. A system screen appears, showing him the mission he needs to complete. His mission was more than simple. Zero needed to enter a certain place where he would need to collect a certain NPC. However, he was looking for the rewards, but he couldn't find the rewards he was looking for. But again, The system shows the mission that Zero needed to complete. Darkness had covered the land, and monsters had come back to life. Humanity faces a dangerous disaster, but at the first source of the alternate world nightmare, you will need to have a goal. This goal is to find a survivor, alien. This will be your goal. Bring him to the safe zone as quickly as possible, as he only has 12 hours remaining from there. If he doesn't do this, he will probably fail this mission. So in front of him appears a map, the map leading to the Basar Forest. However, it was level 10, and Zero here at the moment was level 100. He wondered how he would manage to get there to complete the mission. At the moment, Zero had a priority to hunt the wild boars. But he remembered that wild boars appear in groups, and at the moment, Zero was not the strongest here to take on a wild boar alone. So, knowing that it wouldn't be easy to deal with wild boars, he changed his mind. He would first meet, perhaps, with this mission being completed, and he would then reach levels reasonably close to the wild boars while he thought about what he would do to find this ally. We observed the scene elsewhere. A little girl was running, and while running, she was shouting for those wild boars to stay away from her. She also pleaded for those creatures not to come close to her. Just as she was asking this, we observe an explosion. This explosion ends up falling on top of the wild boar that was trying to catch the little girl. But minutes later, the smoke that was around those wild boars dissipates, and after the smoke clears, we see him appearing, saving this unknown girl. Now she looks up happily, seeing that her brother has saved her. The girl is grateful for this, but minutes later, the system screen appears, showing that the survivor has been found, and there were only 10 hours left to complete the mission. But he realizes this as quickly as possible and starts thinking about leaving. But the wild boar would not allow him to escape quickly. Zero lets out a war cry. The war cry is feared by everyone, but not by him. However, he is confused about the situation. He wonders if it is related to the mission, because as soon as I found the wild boars, the forest wild boars started to become very restless. They went crazy. But at this moment, seeing that they were going crazy, we observed the wild boar in front of our Zero. But the wild boar was no longer stationary. Now Zero was running towards him. He would not stay still, watching the wild boar coming closer to him. He grabs his lance, pushing the wild boar in another direction. Then he launches some attacks in its direction, causing 20 and 15 damage. However, this is not enough to kill the wild boar. Yet the wild boar group started approaching him, surrounding the two of them. They didn't know how to escape while the wild boars bared their teeth to get our hero. But they are strong and tough, also a mythical class, and equipped with extremely strong attributes. A fireball wouldn't be enough to deal with something like them. This wild boar might be ranked, and he couldn't move from there. So if he dies here, his mission will certainly fail. Then Zero called the armored scorpion. He asks the armored scorpion to protect them both. At this moment, as he asks the scorpion to protect them, we observe the wild boars growling in their direction, but they attack our hero, and the Scorpion King, who was protecting him, throws the wild boars a little backwards. But our hero doesn't stay still. With his staff in hand, he uses those 3 fireballs. After making them in front of him, he throws those 3 fireballs in the specific direction of a wild boar that was nearby. After launching this attack towards the wild boar, he kills it. The system celebrates this. However, he also celebrates seeing that his strategy worked. The armored scorpion will be scraping the wild boars' backs, removing their protection, which will allow him to deal with the wild boars. So it is done. He repeats the same thing again. The wild boars that were all there receive the full explosion damage from our hero. After several minutes, he realizes that his mana was running out and the wild boars keep coming non-stop. But the little girl approaches and asks if her big brother was okay. He turns around and asks her not to worry, because he will definitely be protecting her and will be taking her to the right place where his mission had determined before. But after finishing that, a wild boar attacks, and he uses his staff to defend himself. The little girl just watches the wild boar attacking, but we see that he used his magic again and blows up the wild boar. Meanwhile, from behind, we observe a scorpion causing damage, But the wild boar ends up locking all the explosion and damage from that scorpion, and he even shows off a bit. He starts walking slowly towards our hero. But now he realizes that, unfortunately, his health was no longer what it was before. So otherwise, if he continued, he would faint just because of a wild boar. Moreover, the armored scorpion also couldn't take it anymore, and he never thought this reward mission would be so difficult. But after a lot of suffering, guess what? Zero finished off the wild boars. They fell defeated, and thanks to that, he finally managed to level up his classes twice in a row, and thanks to that, he also ended up leveling up his system quite a bit. However, he also previously obtained, by defeating the Scorpion King, a ring. This ring allows him to penetrate any defense, no matter if it is strong or weak. So he will use this ring to finish off the last wild boar. At this moment, he grabs his staff and uses the last magic he had, a giant fireball. That fireball sphere goes towards the wild boar that was there, and in the end, that wild boar is defeated, and he ends up receiving the rewards. But compared to before, he can now only kill a wild boar with 2 or 1 shot with just 1 fireball. To finish off the rest of the wild boars, Zero runs towards them. Explosions and more explosions happen there, and he ends up killing all the wild boars. After a while, he is tired but finally managed to kill the wild boar. Now that he got rid of those unfortunate wild boars, he can take them safely and securely to his village. But look who is here. He thought this thing had already died in the secret realm, and here is the arrogant one next to his ex-girlfriend. But before a fight can start, he asks the arrogant guy to leave. He wasn't in the mood to fight, but his ex-girlfriend ends up stoking his anger more. She asks her big brother to deal with the failure. He was just a failure who had no equipment, while he had superior level equipment. But after provoking his anger, he ends up pulling out his knife. But now he realizes that he was really trying to kill him. So now that he asked to start, Zero asks him to come at him with everything he's got. With his dagger in hand, he goes for him. Zero asks him to die once and for all and not think too highly of himself because he had in his hand the most powerful weapon. However, that most powerful weapon ends up having no effect at all on him. That weapon near his shoulder now stops, and he asks, How was this possible? How did this strongest weapon he has stop quickly with simply no movement from our hero? He was just a tamer of common beasts. How could he stop an attack from our brother Yao? But now that he attacked him, Zero takes a break and also asks if he finished already. Since he finished now, it was his turn. Because now it is your turn to play there with him a little bit. Well, it was 5 minutes of beating without losing friendship. And so we observed a big fireball appearing on the staff. Our hero. He ends up opening his mouth and asks him to wait. Zero was the president, and even more a son who is considered supreme in the Liu family. And if you messed with him with certainty, his family would be hunting him until the last day of his life. But his presence here was not so significant since Zero then uses his staff with that magic of his casting that explosion in the direction of the arrogant. The arrogant is hit directly at this moment falling. He asks, what happened? How was it possible for a mere figure to defeat such a powerful guy as him? He was evaporated, falling to the ground the rest of the equipment. Now what means that our boy not here will be able to use what he used, but now he ends up receiving a new ability. Not so useful, but indeed so useful. So here we are presented in the world here that exists N of professions and are generally known more in the world as white professions. However, there are other professions that suddenly attack the white profession, but however these people decided to attack the white people will be considered a gray person for a certain period of time. But however, during this period of time, if you attacked the enemy and defeated him only for your legitimate defense, you will not be able to have a thing there that other types. You will not be able to gain a sin point. But if by chance the victim does not resist and is killed, the aggressor will turn red and gain 100 sin points. And this case about the world rules alternated from this world entering the safe zone was prohibited, and you could no longer leave this world until that title was removed. unless you manage to kill enough monsters for your sins to disappear at once. This is the only chance to basically save your soul, but also when a professional dies, leaves behind experience, XP, life, and everything. Even the equipment he ends up taking, but she behind wonders how he managed to kill the Lancha with a single blow. When he who became so powerful while being astonished with Zero power, Zero asks her what she wanted. She wanted nothing more than she asks him not to kill her since she already used 2 resurrection scrolls. However, she does not have any more scrolls and she cannot die here. But knowing that Zero will kill her, she ends up making up some excuses saying that last time she separated she never forgot him, always in the night. More vague, she remembered him. Only he passes by her without even paying attention to her. He had priority to take that one he saved before, but here passing by her Zero is surprised to see that she did not interfere with his plans. So there is no reason to want to defeat her. However, if she had moved one single thing, his mission would have failed, and his artifacts could say goodbye to them, so he cannot lose much more time here with these extras. He has something more important to do now. She, who was bragging a little while ago out of pure fear, ends up getting angry to see that he ignored her. Now she wants to make him pay a lot for that. But the scene that is cut to another place in a cabin, we see that little girl thanking our hero for bringing her here to her house. For having managed to take her to her house, he ends up receiving some rewards, the system even D. Congratulations to him, but Zero also ends up receiving some rewards. One of them was just to level up his levels and other basic things. However, he pulls out his spear because now his goal was to level up that little thing there since he now has a new weapon. This weapon is known more as the Ice Rod, the most powerful. However, to make it even more powerful than it already is, he needed to refine it more than it already was. So he will be spending 22,000 alternate energy points to get it to the maximum level, and as soon as he does this, we observe the weapon of our Zero reaching the most powerful level. The weapon emits a new glow, but now that it's finished, NSSO Hero realizes that the higher the quality of the equipment, the more energy will be consumed. But fortunately for him, this is not so important. It is not a big problem for him. However, the system not only did not give that stolen spear, but also ended up giving him a new reward. This thing was a pet egg. At this moment, he holds that egg and realizes that it was just a normal grade pet. Zero also ended up receiving many common pet eggs when he was just rubbing the monsters there. The system then shows him the pets he might have in the future, but now this is not so important. He will then take those pet eggs and give them to his scorpion. He has as a priority the father, so he will give all those resources to Zero. We observe that the scorpion loved this idea, and soon the scorpion ends up devouring the eggs. At this moment, the scorpion levels up. It was no longer a rare level scorpion as before, because now his pet managed to reach the silver branded level, which becomes much more powerful than anything. The beast even growls in every direction, but Zero puts his hand on it and asks it to calm down. Now it was not so bad since he now has a 2-star equipment, an armored scorpion, and also those items from the Leal Zum, the arrogant one who contributed earlier. Now it should be enough for Zero to pass the strongest bosses. Obstacles are no longer obstacles for him, but before Zero goes into the strongest boss, he needed to do something first. This thing was to go back to replenish his equipment and food. So the portal opens, and he goes towards the portal. Entering the portal, Zero ends up arriving in the city. Inside the city, we observe him appearing in a room and inside a portal. At the moment he steps into the portal inside his house, his cell phone ends up ringing. When he answers it, he realizes it was a call from the hospital stating that Zero needed to pay a debt of $399,000 on which his brother had not paid. Due to this, the hospital would be covering all the losses, but he needed to provide the card number. If not provided, or if provided, they would call back in 10 minutes to give all the good news. Knowing that life was difficult, he pulls from the system some equipment to sell and earn some millions. This would be helping the original owner here and saving his brother. This can be considered a refund for being. Basically, by providing this body here so that he could use it at will, he was already opening the system so he could sell, but the system prohibited him. He then realizes that this was one of the reasons he managed to reach quite a few levels, and it's likely that he won't be able to sell here in the system. He has no other idea now of how he would sell this, and now realizing that he has no chance, he notices that he could also be selling his coins, but even if he sells his silver coins, it will only get him 10,000 ones, and that is still not enough here. So he takes out his bell and looks for some rides where he can make easy money, but after looking around a bit, he realizes that the money given by them is basically being charged by some DJOs and was very little, and it would be too slow to finish that. Not knowing how he would manage to get this money, he ends up seeing another message. This was a message from Rimuro, who was rewarding for the first newest professional in the world of their city with a certain amount of 300,000 on. Well, he just needed to train a certain amount, just to start the party, because now everything here will be starting at its good moment. But you know, man, this we will really be discovering literally only in a next part.